Real Estate PropTechs Take the Jump. I'm Steve Weichel. I'm the head of industry relations at the MIT Center for Real Estate and also the real estate tech lead for our real estate innovation lab. And I'm delighted to be here. This is a topic that I am deeply involved with and excited to be a part of, the area of technology and innovation and how it's impacting the real estate industry. And so before we begin, a couple of housekeeping issues. If you could please all mute your sound and turn off your video. For those who are participants, mute your sound and turn off your video. And I'll introduce our topics, the speakers and the sharks, and then tell you a little bit about how the process is going to go today. And also as a reminder, be sure to address your Q&A through the chat feature on Zoom. We'll be monitoring that. And we'll also have some polling questions that will come up during the program. So let's get right to it. I am delighted to welcome our presenters today, Laura Patel from Density. She's the Director of Strategic Accounts. Also Andrew Flint, co-founder of Occupier. Bridget Beltran, who's the East Coast Director of Workplace Solutions at Saltmine. And Jake Snyder, founder and CTO at TrackFlow. And they're all going to tell you about what they're, the exciting things that they're working on. And of course, our sharks. Welcome, sharks. Megan Riley, who's the growth lead for the Americas at JLL Spark. Gus Vasquez, who's the senior project manager at Viacom CBS. Gus, is that your dog that joined us? I don't know. Stan Gibson, senior vice president of real estate at Wells Fargo. And Kurt Ochala, head of global real estate at Biogen. So welcome, sharks. Nice to have you with us. Welcome, presenters. And with that, we will go ahead and begin with a polling question. Let's look at our first polling question that's going to come up. Here we go. Which presentation are you most interested in hearing about? I don't know, this is sort of a fake out for the presenters right at the beginning, but anyway, let's go ahead and everybody go ahead and take a shot at that. And we'll see how the results turn out in a moment. And then we'll move right on to the presenter. And do we have results? We may not. We'll, here we are. Density 47%, Occupier 35%, Saltmine 16%, TrackFlow 2%. I think that's going to change as we move along here, as we hear about these exciting new things. So with that, I am pleased to introduce Density, and so Laura Patel, I will turn it over to you. Thank you.
Awesome, and I'm going to hope that that doesn't change because I hope we stay as a front runner for the rest of the hour. So hey everyone, my name's Laura Patel, and I'm here today to tell you about how we're using artificial intelligence to help tenants and owners better understand how people use space accurately, anonymously, and in real time. So why would anyone care about how space is used? Well, the reality is that annually the data tells us that we spend about $150 billion a year on space that's paid for but actually vacant. And this is a huge and expensive problem for most companies, but in fact it's an unnecessary one given the availability of technology that can help us to better understand our spaces, really liberating tenants to help make decisions on the fly to optimize them. So before I jump into how we do that, a little about us. So we were founded in 2014. We recently completed our Series C raise led by Kleiner Perkins to the tune of $51 million. And our leadership and engineering team hail from the likes of NASA, Microsoft, Apple, and we are all American. So we are headquartered in San Francisco, and we actually do all of our manufacturing in upstate New York. So how do we count people? Well, we are what's called a threshold-based sensor, which in simple terms basically just means that we mount above any point of entry into a space. So that can be a really simple 3-foot wide door like what you see here, or it can be a really, really wide hallway. So here you have a 20-foot wide hallway entrance, and we've daisy-chained 3 sensors together that are working as a team to monitor this 20-foot wide entryway into a cafeteria space. So the thing that these two spaces have in common, although they look dramatically different, is that they both represent thresholds across which humans would have to travel when exiting one space and entering another. The way that we actually count the humans is we use an infrared laser, which is being cast out of the device, and it's basically bouncing off of everything it comes in contact with, and it's returning what are called depth dimensions back up into the sensor. So if I was to walk below the sensor for half a second, it would literally, in that half a second, collect hundreds of thousands of little readings about me. So those little depth dimensions, returning them back up into the sensor. And over the course of a full second, the sensor's collecting literally millions of those little data points. And when we stitch all of those together to kind of render what the sensor sees, it looks a little something like this. So really easy for us with these huge human brains to understand what's going on in this frame. The door opens and then 4 people walk through. This is really confusing for a machine if left to its own devices without further support. And that's what would typically lead to an erroneous or an inaccurate count. And so we take that a step further and we put all of those data points I was describing before through a series of sophisticated algorithms, which have been trained to help the machine distill that really complicated information and to pare it down to only the things we want it to care about, which in this case is the human beings that are either coming or going from a space. So how do we use that to help address applicable business use cases? Well, prior to the pandemic, we had 3 core benefits that we provided organizations, helping them to enhance physical security through tailgating detection, pairing with other technologies, like some of what you're going to hear after me from my fellow presenters to help achieve other benefits within the workplace. So pairing, for example, with a room scheduling system where we would say, hey, somebody booked this room, but they didn't show up. Let's not let it go vacant for the next 50 minutes. Let's release it back out into open inventory. Or, hey, you've had a whole bunch of humans through your cafeteria. We're probably running low on the 50 flavors of nuts and all of the fruits. You may want to have someone to come by and top those up. And most importantly, helping organizations optimize their portfolios, answering questions like, of all of the buildings in our portfolio, which one of them is the most underutilized? And really quickly we can see, well, that's 5 Hanover Square. And is all of 5 Hanover Square really performing poorly, or is it just certain floors? And we can see again, really quickly, that the VES department on floor 3 is the worst offender, but actually across the stack, almost every department and every floor within this building is doing poorly. So we're really oversubscribed in terms of the amount of space. And is it the whole floor or is it certain rooms? So room 202, we can see that it's actually used 92% of the time, which is awesome. That's what we like to see, or at least what we did prior to the pandemic. But unfortunately, it's actually used incorrectly. So it's designed for 4 people, and yet 45% of the time, only 1 person's using it, and 28% of the time, 2 people are. So 75% of the time, it's actually being used by half the amount of people it was designed for. Jumping forward into the pandemic use cases though, because obviously organizations are concerned about different challenges as it relates to how to optimize their spaces. In response to the pandemic, we took that really valuable information that was previously being aggregated behind the scenes to drive long-term strategy and decision-making. And we're now making it available in real time to help support organizations with their safe return to work strategies. So the first way in which we're doing that is this live display. So taking that data and making it available for me as an employee or as a guest, so that when I show up at the space, before I've even entered it, I know whether or not it's safe for me to do so. And if it's not, I have a wait time. So I know how long exactly I'm probably going to have to hang out before I can go in. And if I don't need to go to the first floor, maybe I could go to the second floor instead. I have a little legend on the right-hand side that lets me know if there's another amenity or another space within the building that I could travel to instead. And this goes for smaller spaces as well. So restrooms, ironically, have become one of the scariest places in a workplace because they're one of the most tightly impacted in terms of the occupancy or the design for capacity of them. We don't really know if we're putting ourselves in harm's way until we enter it. And so again, being able to see before I enter that space whether or not it's safe for me to do so. As an employee or a guest, I'm empowered to take control of my own safety. And it also reinforces that it is safe for me to be there and that there are different investments in place to ensure my safety. And then if I can't go into that bathroom, being able to see where there may be a different restroom on the floor that I could travel to and access immediately. And this is true for any shared spaces that may be harder for us to monitor. Just because they don't have assigned seats. So cafeteria spaces, fitness centers, locker rooms, or in some Manhattan buildings, roof deck or common public areas. Secondly, obviously, we hope employees make safe decisions, but if they don't, employers are looking for a way to have a built-in insurance policy where they can ensure that their employees are being kept safe, even if they're not making those decisions for themselves. And so we've built a robust alerting platform within our platform itself, where, okay, so the legal capacity of the second floor may be 600, but the target capacity, or it's designed for capacity, is 280. And right now, because of the pandemic, we're only allowing 50% of the workplace back. So I'm able to go in and set an alert to either get an email or a text message. And because it's at 50%, we're going to set that alert to be 140 people. So I want to get a text message anytime the occupancy of this space exceeds 140. And I also want to get an escalation notice. So for every 10 additional people that come in. So the way this is saved, I'll get a text message at 141 people, and then 151, and then 161, and so on and so forth. And I can also go ahead and do this in our mobile app if that's easier, in which case I'll just get a mobile notification similar to when you get a Facebook message.
Laura,
and
you
lastly,
have 1 minute
usage.
remaining.
Awesome. I'm going to come in under that. So lastly, using this for things like usage-based cleaning. So that same alerting system, but being able to drive janitorial tickets, either using our platform's alerts or feeding us into an IWMS system, where we would be helping your janitorial staff to clean space in response to actual usage, as opposed to an arbitrary static schedule. So one of the owners that we just installed with, for example, across their 20 floor skyscraper, we were able to tell them that certain floors were receiving 5 times the usage of other floors, and some floors were actually not used at all. So rather than them wasting time cleaning spaces that hadn't been used since the last time the janitorial staff serviced them, they're able to make more efficient use of that team's time in directing their efforts in response to actual foot traffic. So that's it for me.
Excellent, Laura, thank you. AI, sensors, COVID solutions, all wrapped up, great stuff. Sharks, please jump in and ask questions.
Hey, Laura, I'll kick off. This is Dan Gibson with Wells Fargo. Great presentation. How you predicted COVID back in 2014 is beyond me. Congrats for doing that. Just a question. As you have these sensors, who designs and makes those? And are you kind of limited to scale up given their ability to produce them, install them? Are you dependent on one company for that? And then the second maybe question on top of that is, have you looked at other industries? I know when I go to Trader Joe's, I have to stand outside for 15 minutes until people walk out and there's a counter letting people in and letting them out. I don't know if you've looked at other industries, but can you maybe comment on that as well? Thank you, and a great presentation.
Thanks, Dan. So the first part of your question, we are the designer and the manufacturer. So I feel really lucky. I get to work beside people that are literally writing algorithms and designing hardware all day. I just get to be the pretty face that comes out and shares that really exciting story. So we are the manufacturer of it, end to end, from design to construction of the devices. In terms of how they're implemented, not to underplay the sophistication of the system, but literally whoever is pulling the wire for a client is typically the one that actually installs the devices. The heavy lift is the accuracy and the provisioning that happens in behind the scenes, and that's all done remote by our team. So we do have a global network of resellers that we work with, and that's typically how clients choose to go. But when we're working with really large organizations, they typically have a vendor that they know and trust. And in those instances, again, we would just go through a short certification process, and then anyone who is either doing AV integration or pulling wire would be certified to install the device. In terms of other industries that we've looked at, I'd be lying if I said pre-pandemic we were focused, outside of commercial real estate. We work mostly with Fortune 500 organizations and higher ed. However, in the wake of the pandemic, within the first few months, we suddenly became the accidental safety company that was working with essential businesses to help them stay open. So we worked with a lot of food processing, manufacturing facilities, distribution centers, and even an entire town who had to keep their council coming into the office. And so we went from being very CRE focused to suddenly working with any organization who really needed tools and assistance to be able to safely keep their people in the office.
Great. Other Sharks?
Hey, Laura. Oh, it's Megan from JLL Spark. So a concern we're hearing from a lot of our occupier clients that in addition to measuring occupancy on a floor, they're also interested in monitoring social distancing on the floor to ensure that their people are actually staying 6 feet apart, not crowding around a desk. Do your sensors have the ability to detect kind of these unsafe interactions, we'll call them?
No, and that was by design. Our platform is by design completely anonymous, and we're not actually tailing people into the space. I'm sort of at odds as an employee or the beneficiary of that type of technology. I don't know that I want to get a shock if I happen to walk a bit too close to a colleague. We, by design, chose to take a little bit of a different approach, which is we want to empower employees to make safe decisions and to know that they can safely enter a space, less so on the like policing if I happen to get a little bit too close to my colleague. So no, we don't know where you go within the space once you're there.
Got it. Great. Thank you.
Hi, Laura. Quick question on privacy. So in my experience, the privacy issues in EMEA are much more significant than the US, and this appears to take the anonymity out of it. So has it been proven and used in those markets where workers' councils and other countries in EMEA don't allow tracking of employees?
Yeah, so I think the biggest difference between our platform and other sensor technologies is other sensor technologies are doing what's called destroying the PII or the information at the edge. So they are collecting PII, but then they're destroying it before it leaves the device. We're actually anonymous at the source. So we have no way by design of ever even collecting PII. And so because of that, we are innately GDPR compliant. And we're installed globally in about 35 countries across every continent at this point.
Great, thank you.
Hey, Laura, this is Gus. Well, first of all, one of the things I really like about it is, like you talked about, the anonymity of it. Also, just the workplace efficiency aspect of it, of finding, you know, what conference rooms are being used and how spaces are actually being used, which is great information for future projects as well. Question I had is, for the devices installation, we spoke about it earlier, but are any of the devices have an option to be wireless? And also, how is the information shared with employees? Is there a mobile app, or is it just on screens on the wall like you showed on the presentation?
Yeah, so from a connectivity standpoint, we don't need to have a hardline data connection. We can also tap into a Wi-Fi network, and we can also use just a wireless LTE router. So there doesn't need to be a hard connection to the network. In terms of employees accessing that data, they can either use our Density Live page, which is just a free page that we offer. I'm just going to share my screen here. So we would white label this for clients, making whatever floors available that they wanted their employees to see. Most clients at this stage, though, are using some sort of employee experience app, whether that's, you know, CBRE Host or the likes. And so in that instance, we have a completely open API, and we would just use that API to actually feed the occupancy data into whatever app the employees were already leveraging. And the same goes when we're working with owners for tenant experience apps.
Excellent, Laura. Thank you for a terrific presentation. Thank you, Sharks, for really great questions. Moving right along now. Before we do, though, just a reminder for those of you who are attending, you can send in questions through the chat function, and we will have a Q&A for attendees at the end, which will be able to answer any questions that didn't come up during the process with the review by the Sharks. So moving along now to Occupier, Andrew Flint, I'll turn it over to you.
Awesome, let me share my screen. And then present. Great, thank you very much. My name is Andrew Flint. I'm one of the co-founders of Occupier. We're a real estate success platform that enables tenants and tenant brokers to make better real estate decisions. The COVID's a popular topic, obviously. The impact of COVID over the past couple of months has really forced a lot of companies to rethink how they're using real estate. Hence, you know, tools like Density, which are making a positive impact. When you look at March and April and May and the headlines that were coming out then, one might have thought that, you know, the office was going to become obsolete. But what's been really interesting to see with our clients and talking with the industry, that while companies needed to work from home to kind of survive, many have found that the extended work from home can have a negative impact on their business. So projects are taking longer. Hiring is more complicated, integrating employees and training employees. Employees are feeling less connected. So while this was essential for keeping employees safe, it's something that's not sustainable long-term. And you can hear, Bruce Moser from Cushman say that, one thing that we've definitely figured out is that people want, and appreciate the office hub. So, the office isn't going anywhere, and commercial real estate isn't going anywhere in general. And with that, companies are being forced to, again, rethink their real estate. So they're really focused on a bunch of core areas that are kind of resurfacing and getting more priority than ever. One is geography. Are we, where do we need space? Who works from home and how often? Is the workforce centralized, or is it distributed across multiple satellite offices? How do we use space? It's estimated that 30–50% of space goes underutilized. Utilization is getting more focus than ever, just because of how employees should be interacting when they do come in. How much are we spending on real estate? Real estate has historically been one of the second, third largest expense of any business out there. And with that, with your spend, how is that impacting your financials? So if you issue GAAP financial statements as a private company by the end of next year, you're going to have to be compliant with new accounting standards. So this increased focus has really added this additional layer of complexity of how companies align their real estate with the operational needs of their business. Now take into account all of the people that are involved, and that's what we've seen as a growing number of people. That's adding an additional layer of complexity to what really has historically been this, somewhat sophisticated game of telephone, which has been a result of really poorly designed technology that occupiers and brokers have been relying on. A lot of outdated, archaic systems and processes that rely heavily on Excel and PowerPoint and Word. Introducing Occupier. So we have built a real estate success platform for both tenants and tenant brokers to work in conjunction with additional stakeholders to collaborate around key real estate data and decisions. So tenants and brokers are relying on Occupier in 3 core areas. First is a modern lease administration tool. So something that actually is easy to use and makes your core real estate data accessible. So this is, where are we located? What other key portfolio data do we have? Cost tracking, automate critical date notifications that ensure that we are aligning a business decision to a key decision we need to make that's associated with our lease. Also access to key documents, and all of this, but all of the different people that might have some stake in a real estate decision. Collaborative deal management. So as you have a business initiative or something from a lease that triggers you to make a real estate decision, how do you collaborate with all of the different people on start to finish deal tracking? Most importantly, dynamic site selection. So you can get to that point, how do we truly evaluate whether our existing location or alternatives are best fit for our requirement? And what we'll be launching in the fall is an ASC 842 compliant lease accounting module. So seamlessly connecting your core lease administration data to your accounting and finance teams that need it to be able to close their books, run full amortization schedules, and complete their journal entries. Brand names leveraging Occupier today include DraftKings, Indeed, Discover Financial, DocuSign, Shake Shack, and top brokerage teams from major firms across the country like JLL, Newmark, and CBRE. A couple case studies. Indeed, when they initially came on, their entire goal as a team was to improve the decision-making process around all of the different people that are involved within their organization. For them, that was their real estate team, finance, their workplace strategy team, HR, AV and IT, business unit leads, as well as their third-party CBRE brokerage teams. So for them, as a result, which they quickly saw over a couple of months, is they improved their decision-making process, which enabled them to not only execute a deal, but actually get their operations up and running faster than they had before. On the brokerage side, JLL Chicago. Their entire goal was to centralize their transaction process to improve the communication, one, with their client, but two, with the local market brokers that they work with in different cities as they are representing their core client base that has a multi-market reach. For them, they improved client relationships, they sped up their deal process, and they're starting to actually pitch this as a tool as part of their platform to actually win business. For Occupier, we're really in phase one right now. We're really focused on improving the workflow across lease administration, transaction management, and accounting. So kind of bringing an industry that has been kind of relied on poor technology in the past and kind of bringing it into the 21st century in terms of easy to use, accessible technology. Phase two, we really want to focus on systems integrations. So how can we integrate with internal ERP systems, HR systems, tools like a Density, so we can understand how people are actually kind of using their space, maybe third-party demographic data. How does that layer into not both lease administration, but also the transaction management piece to help facilitate decisions? How do we use that data to be more prescriptive and facilitate decision-making? And fourth, how do we start to take the demand that's being created in Occupier and service that in a manner that really puts the tenant and their broker on a much more level playing field with the landlord in terms of determining what is the best space that fits our need and what are the best terms that apply to that as well. So at Occupier, we believe that, like many other industries, this is one that will ultimately happen online. And our goal is to build a software platform that enables that frictionless lease management decision-making business for the tenant or broker, and all of the other different parties that are involved. So our whole goal for you is how do we let you take control of your real estate for your business?
Andrew, excellent. This is great. Both of you came in under the wire, so we're keeping right on schedule. And Occupier, lease portfolio optimization, workflow and process optimization, and soon to be accounting and administrative integration. Really terrific. Thank you for that. Sharks, feel free to jump in.
I can start. Hey, it's Megan from Spark. I know you previously worked for VTS. I'm curious how you'd respond to the concern that VTS might enter the occupier space.
Yeah, we get that question a lot. We have very good relationship with VTS. We were there for a long time. From everything when we talk to them and everything we understand, they are so heavily focused on the landlord, continuing to evolve their legacy tools, but also this new marketplace launch is certainly not a light lift. We ideally think that down the road, we are a very synergistic platform to people like VTS. And that it's a separate business, to be honest with you. A separate target market, separate tools. It would be a very heavy lift. Although, you can never say never that they wouldn't try it.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Other Sharks?
Andrew, this is Dan Gibson. I had kind of a similar question, kind of along those lines. What are you the best at doing, and what are the modules that maybe you've left out so far? You covered a couple of those when you talked a little bit about workflow and systems integration, but what are the modules that maybe you've left out by design? Maybe you want to tackle them in the future, maybe you haven't yet. But can you talk to me a little bit about that? Because I know some of the bigger IWMS systems, probably have multiple modules that might have a few more in their holster. But can you talk to me a little bit about the future and what you're going to add to this?
Yeah, first off, I think what we're really good is building, easy to use and accessible technology for those three core areas: transaction, lease admin, and lease accounting. Where we want to go in the future, what we haven't done yet on purpose because of, the stages we know that we need to kind of get through as a business, is the data piece. So we think there's a huge opportunity in the future where you can start to layer in other data sets based upon integrations with other tools that you're using. The static component of lease administration is something that there's an opportunity for it to be so much more dynamic. Looking at a space, understanding how you're performing based upon its use, based upon your revenue to rent ratios, whether you're an office user or retail. So all those things in terms of layering in your own data based upon other tools that you use for your business is something that can be extremely powerful in terms of helping you make your own decisions and understanding actually how you're actually using real estate yourself as a company. That's probably phase one. Down the road, we get into then kind of much more aggregate anonymous data. We think there's huge opportunity from the transaction piece to drive data based upon like truly leading indicators about what companies are going to do in the future. Because when you look at that process, it takes a long time. 6, 12, 18 months, depending on the size. So kind of understanding some of the aggregate components of that data early on can be really powerful market indicators.
Great, thanks, Andrew.
I can go next. From a project management perspective, I was interested in the alerts that the software can give you for TI reimbursement, commencement dates. How does the software capture that lease data? Does somebody have to enter it, or does it capture it somehow?
Yeah, we assist you with onboarding all of your initial information right now. We have a team that does that, that can take structured data or actually abstract leases and get it into the system. We've also built the transaction tool as well as you're negotiating a deal and structuring core components of that transaction, is being able to immediately turn that into something that you can track from a lease administration perspective. We think there's a huge opportunity that you can, let me take a step back. We think the process of lease abstraction overseas in India or the Philippines is actually a broken process. You go through 12 months of negotiating a deal, and then you send a 100-page PDF lease document to someone that has no insight into what decisions were made and why, and you're charging that person with kind of taking core data out of it. We think you can structure that along the way and more inherently then start to track more accurate data going forward. So we've already built tools to help facilitate that in transitioning from a done deal to a lease that you're tracking in your lease administration module.
That's great. Thanks.
A quick question on adoption. So early in my career, I worked for a firm called Workplace IQ, which had $10 million investment from 4 of the largest brokerage firms in the country. Excuse me. And part of that was Project Octane, which is developing the transaction piece of what you were talking about. And despite each of those firms' $2.5 million investment, they could not agree on what that system should do. So I'm curious, brokerage is highly fragmented outside the large firms. So what's adoption been within the larger firms? Is it just small teams that are using it, or are you talking really high levels in the organization about full adoption with the major brokerage houses?
We are taking a kind of a parallel approach, but more heavily focused right now on a bottoms-up approach. We learned a lot in doing this at BTS in terms of selling into the landlord and the landlord agent. Also from our experience of working at the big firms, I was at JLL for about 7 years in New York. You have to get adoption from the individual brokers for the top brass to pay attention. And to do that, you have to think about building tools for the brokers that actually make their lives easier. So thinking about their day-to-day functions rather than the reporting components first. And I think that's where a lot of the firms mess up in terms of trying to implement or build their own technology, and that's where we've had a lot of success. For us, what's been really cool to see is that our organic growth has been based upon a team, like I mentioned in JLL Chicago, having a deal for a client of theirs in a different city, bringing on that, aligning with a broker in that city to help coordinate on that deal, them being an occupier for a specific transaction, liking it so much, and then signing up for their own licenses to manage their own client base. That sort of adoption has been really awesome to see in terms of our own growth and people kind of really engaging with it.
Okay, excellent questions, excellent discussion. Andrew, thank you very much. Now it's time for a poll. Our second polling question. Second polling question, which shark is most compelling to you right now? Which shark is your favorite? Okay, this is poll number 2. I don't know, these are tough questions. Okay.
The main one.
Yeah. Take 15 seconds to click. Good thing we've heard from all the sharks. Everybody go ahead and submit, and we'll get the results. And this also gives us a pause for a moment. Okay, here we go. Stan, nice. Stan Gibson, Wells Fargo, 38%. Megan, close second, 34. Gus, and then Kurt. So we should probably do this a little later on as well. But anyway, thanks everybody for playing along with us. Again, thank you, Sharks, for these great questions. Okay, moving on to our third presenter. I'm pleased to introduce Brigitte Beltran, who's at Salt Mine. She's the East Coast Director of Workplace Solutions. And Brigitte, with that, I will turn it over to you. But I think you need to unmute, Brigitte. Sorry about that. There
Thank
we
you.
go.
Sorry about this. And great. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm excited to introduce Salt Mine to you all. And I guess today what I'm going to do is talk to you about our company. So we are basically based in San Francisco. We do have an office in New York, and we're about 130 people in the world. As far as our value proposition, we do focus on the workplace, obviously, in the workplace strategy, programming, and design focus. But what I'm going to focus on today is speaking to you about new social distancing product offering that we have developed to optimize employee workplace reentry in the short and long term. But before I do so, I want to talk to you a little bit about Salt Mine as a technology company and how we basically fit in the value chain, corporate real estate value chain. So when you look at technologies and that have disrupted the operations of companies in the last 20 years, there are many that have been on the marketplace that have disrupted finance, sales, HR, and you name it. But in corporate real estate, we're a little bit behind. In recent years, we have had a bunch of different companies that have come on the marketplace, and such as my colleagues today that are presenting on the lease transaction side or on the build and manage side. But when you look at the middle tranche here in the design phase, there is very little that has been done. And what we are seeing is that there is, we designed the way we used to design 100 years ago. The process is very linear. So when you think about a workplace strategy that is given today, it's given as a PDF or PowerPoint. It is then given to a planner who's going to do the program for the project in an Excel spreadsheet. Then given to somebody else who's going to do the design, either in CAD or Revit, and the budget in another format. This is what we speak about when we speak of from a fragmentation. And Salt Mine comes to really disrupt that, to look at, okay, how are we going to go from this linear process where when you're into the workplace strategy, and then you evolve, in the context of your project, you're having quantity and costing, it is very difficult to go back to your workplace strategy. We're going to transform that into an agile process that's going to look at, basically, you're going to be able to go back to your workplace strategy, whether you're in the concept design, in your 3D, in your quantity and costing, and really work in a more effective and in a smarter way, basically. So now I'm going to introduce to you what I was hoping to speak about today, which is really like the workplace reentry package that we developed around like optimizing the employees' workplace reentry and looking at it not only in the short term, whether in September or in January, but how we're going to evolve, and as the pandemic evolves or hopefully disappear, how we're going to organize our workplace reentry and the workforce. As such, I want to introduce you to the Salt Mine platform here. And this is the first page. When you arrive on the platform, you're going to have your entire real estate portfolio with all your assets on the map here. On the left at the bottom, you're going to have all your projects around the world in which the phase which they are on. On the right, you're going to have your density and cost and summary view for your entire real estate portfolio. As I zoom on one region, and in this case on the New York region, my apologies, not sure what happened. As I zoom on the New York region, there you go. I do have the same thing for the region itself, right? For all the projects in that region, and basically a summary of the density, cost, and summary view for that region. Now I'd like to take you to to a project itself. And here you can see a floor plan. And I want to show you what the acceleration and the optimization of your space means here. So we're going to start with basically selecting the entire floor plan here and looking to optimize the space. So I selected it. And basically I'm going to add the distance ring. And I'm going to look at, okay, what are those spaces that are non-compliant right now? And as you can see, pretty much my entire floor plan is not compliant. So I'm going to zoom on one of those rings. And then I'm going to go back to saying, okay, let's just optimize the entire floor plan very quickly. And as you can see, it's a matter of 2 or 3 clicks. And basically the intelligent algorithm are going to presently optimizing my space. And as I pull back here, my entire space was optimized. So as I zoom back on one specific area here, those workstations, you can see that the spaces in green are the places where I can sit, and the ones underneath that is transparent, I cannot obviously sit on it. Now, going back to that specific area, I'd like to talk to you about the phase reentry planning and the fact that you can really toggle for multiple scenarios, that you're gonna be able to do a few things here. The first one being to be able to assign a name. So here you can see that we uploaded a bunch of names of all the employees for that specific floor. And I'm gonna take Adam Dooley and just put his name there. And then I'm going to create groups, because let's say we decided that for this floor, for the entire building, we're going to have group A that's going to be in the office on week 1. And then we're going to have group B that is going to be there on week 2. So as such, what I can do here is basically for Adam, I can decide to put him in group A or group B as I wish, and change it as needed. And here we go. So the idea around this, I just showed you based on one person and in a group. However, this can be done for this entire group of workstations. It can be done on workspace type setting. It can be done on the entire floor plan, you name it. The idea here is that the platform is very agile, and it's this ability to adjust it to your needs. The last thing that I would like to show you here is the product catalog, and the fact that we understand that you had to do all this floor plan and readjust, and we want to also support you with social distancing products. And as such, we develop a bunch of social distancing product that I want to show you here, whether it's a task chair or workstation panel, and a lot of other things such as wayfinding, as you can see here, or the graphics and sanitation, you name it, right? So all those items can basically be pulled on the floor plan and can be placed there. So this way you would have your entire floor plan ready for change communication. And the last thing I want to show you here, as we're speaking, is the path of travel. So the idea here is that there is also the fact that there are lots of hallways, and we want to avoid people not only bumping into each other, but also we want to avoid having seatings that are right there in the middle of the pathways. So I want to show you what that means for that specific area. As you can see here, I already drew a pathway, and there is a quiet lounge. So I am going to select this quiet lounge area, and I'm going to optimize it like I previously showed you. And I'm going to say, okay, all right, show me the distance rings. As you can see, those distance rings are colliding with the space, right? So as I optimize them, I don't even need to optimize them to see that they are colliding, but I'm going to do it for the sake of the exercise here. And they disappear because basically it's showing me that these seats are colliding with the pathway. As such, it is my decision to pull back, right? If I wanted to either pull back this entire lounge area a little bit down, or to remove it from the floor plan if needed. So that pretty much summarizes the overall idea of what the package can do for you. And as such, I'd like to close this presentation. And if you have any question for the sharks, I'm looking forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
Brigitte, thank you. Salt mine, data visualization, floor plan and space use optimization, re-entry tools, important right now, and compliance. So lots of really great aspects to salt mine. I'll turn it over to the sharks for questions.
I could start off. This is Gus. As an architect and a project manager, I'm always interested in finding ways to make the design process more efficient. So that's interesting. One question is, how do architects work within this this program? Do they upload, or do they work within it? Another question is also whether there's modules that you can purchase separately, or is it all one package?
Okay. Yes, so thank you for your questions. For your first question, the answer is we do have different client types. We do have the occupiers first and foremost, and we also have a network of architects who leverage the platform for their clients. Going back to the architects, any architects can work on the platform and can access it. If the occupier has it, obviously, it is very easy for them to go on the platform and to work either on the programming or the design phase, and as long as they have access, obviously. And it is a training of about 1 hour, but if you know how to use CAD or Revit, it's very intuitive and actually a lot easier.
And also the question about the modules, whether you can purchase modules separately or is it all one package?
Yes, so the modules are, you can buy them all together or you can buy them separately. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, there is a module that's focusing on strategy planning. There are other modules that are focusing on design, and you can decide whichever one. We have some clients that start with the design only or planning only, and some full scope.
Oh, great, thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Brigitte, Megan. Similar to what Gus just asked, could you talk a little bit more about your pricing model? Is this a subscription-based model or is it project-based?
No, it is a subscription-based model. So basically it is per module. It is also based on the real estate square footage of the client. And then this is how we price it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Brigitte. Great presentation, very interesting product, particularly in today's operating environment. My question is does this integrate with existing IWMS systems that we might have? Does it just overlay on it? How does it integrate with our existing CAD drawings?
So there is no disruption for you in that respect, because today when you pull out your drawings from CAD or Revit, you just pull them and you integrate them in your IWMS system. It is the same thing with SaltMine. I only showed the surface, right? But you're able to pretty much pull your drawings in a CAD, a Revit format, or even a PDF format if you wanted to, and you can then integrate it into your IWMS/CAFM system as you like.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Brigitte, Stan, great product. Just a question, how do you grab market share? I know there's a lot of entrants and people in workflow design. How do you, what's your niche? How are you really focusing on market share?
So I would say 90% of our clients are occupiers. We do have a network of what we call channel partners, who are some large architectural firms such as IA, HOK, whom we have a global national agreements at this point. And then we also work with Cushman & Wakefield on a national platform. Yes, and other companies, but a mix of architects and brokers and others.
Perfect. Great. Thank you.
Okay, great. Any other questions from the Sharks? Very good, Brigitte. Thank you so much for that presentation. Moving along, Jake. There you are. Jake's up. How you doing, Jake?
Good.
So Jake Snyder, founder and CTO of TrackFlow. We're a few minutes early. Jake, are you good to go?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. What is a change order? Who here's ever watched HGTV? And every one of those home makeover shows, mid-show, there's usually some big event that happens that's going to test the budget and throw the timelines off. That's a change order. It's when your simple kitchen makeover ends up here, becomes much bigger than expected. Change orders are unforeseen challenges to a construction project scope. An easy example is you're replacing your kitchen counters. The new counters show up and the hole for the sink is the wrong shape or size. And so now you have a change order. It might just be $500 in time and materials, but you take that into a Manhattan construction project, you now have 40 floors, 40 units per floor, and you have the $500 change that's now become $800,000. So at TrackFlow, we are a cloud-based software as a service tool that is set out to upgrade this process. We started out focused on subcontractors in an industry that has a severe lacking in technology. And we built up a platform that manages communication between the subcontractors and the general contractors in an online collaborative space. And I'm Jake Snyder, CTO of TrackFlow. Cleed, the CEO, and I both met at a construction major general contractor, Turner Construction. We both come from construction families, actually. On large scale projects, like Manhattan office buildings, the timelines are very rigid and the work cannot stop. So the ethos is do the work and we'll work it out later. So documentation becomes everything, and communication can be the difference between getting paid. Here's a good example. In Boston, the Encore Boston Casino finished up construction about a little over a year ago, and pretty much immediately went into a dispute with one of their subcontractors for over $30 million in change orders that had accrued over the project life cycle. A lot of times subcontractors can end up becoming financiers to the construction industry because that money between work completion and payment ends up like a no interest loan. And this cycle can take 120 days just to get paid after the work has already been completed. And there's so many stakeholders involved in this process. So going from the field all the way up to the owner takes time, and there's just a lot of opportunity for loss and miscommunications. So we're leaving paper pads at home, and we've created this online portal that's pretty easy to use and allows for a lot better description of the issues. Moving it into this centralized locations also allowed immediate syncing with the back office. So instead of writing out a paper ticket and taking it to somebody manually and then getting it back to the back office a day or two later, everything happens instantaneously. And that documentation can be vital to getting paid and keeping things on track. We've also moved the approval process by servicing the general contractors as well. We've been able to move the whole approval process digitally. So this goes from the construction foreman out in the field up to the price engineers and the owner. And this documentation can be enhanced with photos and video, and all of the communication can be captured in the application for later reference. So we streamline this process back and forth and into a very clean, simple arc. So this moves the approval up the chain quicker. And this has an added benefit of subcontractors getting paid faster, better documentation for the general contractors, and less surprises for the owners. So it really is a win-win up the entire chain. And with the proprietary data set that we're building, we're developing the ability to use that data to predict future changes. Recently, I had a conversation with a project manager who told me change order came in involving steel. By the time it worked through the process from the site to the owner, a decision was made, and at that point, the price of steel had changed. So in the future, TrackFlow will be able to highlight that type of issue and expedite that type of approval. We have a few metrics currently where we've been able to improve the process for customers already. Increasing revenue by reducing the losses from the paper process, bringing the time to get paid down significantly, and that money gets back to the subcontractor and allows for quicker reinvestment getting more crews out, and with the labor shortage, that can't hurt. And it's projected that in 2020, in the past year really, that about 10 billion will be spent on technology in the construction industry. And we've identified our sweet spot in New York as a $95 million market. Almost 2,000 projects that fit into what we've identified as where we can make the biggest difference. And even if this market shrinks, there's still a lot of activity that's going to continue. Yeah, so currently we've processed $15 million in change orders. We're on over 150 active projects. And minus COVID months, we've had 20% growth in users, and that has picked back up recently with our revenue actually tripling in July from pre-COVID. So, yeah, so in January, we started on one of the largest construction projects in New York, which has been a really great opportunity to really put the full scale to the test with the general contractor. And we've onboarded 15 subcontractors who are submitting all their tickets and getting the approval through our application. And so we're extremely excited about the future of technology and construction. So it's long overdue. We're actually at the moment closing our pre-seed round. So we have 2 investors lined up, and we're looking for a third to round out our cap table. Join us in the future of technology and construction. We're pretty excited about it.
Jake, thank you very much. I think any of us in the business have been around at least one project in our career, if not more, that has gone off the rails. And so this is using technology to deal with certain aspects of the unknown and manage risk. So Jake, thank you for that. Sharks, questions for Jake on track flow?
Hey, Jake. So at Spark, we've evaluated a ton of companies in the construction tech space. And we've seen that commercial contracting is an incredibly fragmented market. How do you get traction with marketing to these smaller players in some of these local markets?
Yeah, so in the beginning, we had a big help by coming from the industry. So we had a lot of contacts, and that has really been a big bonus. We also just go to sites, and that has the benefit of showing that we know what we're doing. A lot of the issues with adopting technology are feeling like it's not actually designed for them. Feeling like technology is designed by software companies. And so we're able to go in and help convince them that we are construction making software versus software making construction applications. And so that's been a big benefit. With COVID, that's obviously harder. And our goal is always to work on social media. And so right now, that's been a big focus and it's been accelerated, is working LinkedIn and the social media. And that's, I mean, I can't say for sure how that's going because it's also new, but so far, I mean, it's been working pretty well. Yeah.
Thank you.
Other questions from the Sharks?
I can go next. This is Gus. So what I like about this is that, you know, in our industry, it's been a problem in the past just getting change orders presented on time or in a expedited manner, and also getting the proper type of backup for change orders, which then also causes more delays if it's not the proper backup and has to go through the process again. So, you know, my questions are how that kind of helps speed up the process. Also, what you just mentioned about information, the data on the percentage of the types of change orders would be good to have for the future. But so, you know, the two questions is how that helps have better backup, and also, you know, related to Megan's question, sophistication of the subcontractors is sometimes an issue in using technology, and if there's been an issue with that, or how this software might help that situation.
Yeah. So better backup. I mean, that one's kind of easy. Getting this digital process automatically allows for so much better documentation. One of the when we started doing construction software, like 8 years ago now, getting people to use technology, like a foreman in the field especially, was like pulling teeth. It's very different in the past few years, and that's mainly because of smartphones. Regularly, I'll talk to a foreman who's never even used a computer in his life, but he has an iPhone in his pocket. So that's been a really big change. And I think that kind of addresses both the questions a little bit. But having that smartphone allows for video, photos. I mean, no longer are we just writing out a paper ticket. We can quickly snap a photo of the issue and the work that was completed. So I mean, that's a big bonus. And that fast process. I mean, I can write out the ticket, take a photo, send it to the superintendent. I mean, that all happened in minutes, versus the paper process that didn't have any of that backup. And I still have to carry it to him and get him to sign it and then take it back to the back office, which may happen, who knows when. It's the next time I'm at the office.
Well, thanks. I
think that's your second question. No, I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. Thank you. I think it's just a really good, simple tool. It doesn't try to do too much. It's great.
Hey, Jake, real quick, it's Stan. Yeah, thanks for carving out the time for this. With your investors, I'm sure that they would probably want to scale the business, but yet New York seems to be kind of your dominant market where you feel there's enough market share. You still feel that way with COVID, that's going to give you enough market share to kind of satisfy the investors in kind of the future?
Yes. I mean, in the immediate future, there's tons of room for growth. And our focus on New York is just about simplicity for the moment. I mean, we're not against being on a project in Chicago. It's just the simplicity of the sales cycle mainly for now. And there's so much room. It also helps that it's a market that we know really well. And these things do change regionally to some extent. So that we're not going to stay in New York. That's not going to be the end goal. It's just our initial beachhead.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
One last question, Jake. Does your system integrate with other traditional project management systems, or is that in your roadmap somewhere?
It is in the roadmap. It doesn't right now. We are working on an integration with Procore, which is the biggest technology provider in construction. They do change orders. They don't do it in a great way, and it's all very focused on the general contractor. So coming at this from the subcontractor side has allowed us to make a tool that subcontractors are more likely to use. So we are working on an integration with Procore to get to help with the general contractor management in the place where they're already managing everything else. There's a lot of great tools that Procore has for that API, and they have ability to actually get your app into their marketplace.
Okay, great. Sharks, any other questions? Good. I'm going to actually ask all of the presenters to come back in. We have some questions from the audience, and welcome back, everybody. Questions for, and a reminder, anybody who wants to chat a question in, we will grab it and ask the question for you. Track flow question for Jake regarding revenue model and pricing. We already answered a question about integration and a question about integration for scheduling, existing scheduling software. So 2 questions, pricing, your pricing model, and then also how can you integrate with scheduling software?
Yeah, so right now, the pricing is pretty simple. It ends up being $100 a user for the subcontractors. And that's how we started out. Now that we're working with general contractors, there's also a monthly fee for the general contractors. I think it's about $1,000 a month right now. And we're working on building that up into just a full project scope where we can work with the owners, and then that will probably end up just being a percentage base and cut the rest out on those projects. So it gets a little complicated. There's still some details that, you know, we're still going back and forth a bit, but that generally that's the pricing.
And scheduling integration?
Scheduling integration. Oh,
yeah, let me go back to the
yeah.
Just a question about integration with existing systems, although I know you talked about it a moment ago.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, so far just Procore is what we're working on.
Yeah. Okay, good. So I keep sending those questions in, but I will say this has been fascinating. Lots of exciting solutions. This is a great time to be involved with real estate, and especially real estate technology. There's so much to do, and I think COVID has accelerated the transformation that was already happening in the industry. So this is all very exciting. Thank you to all of the presenters. Laura Patel at Density, Andrew Flint at Occupier, Brigitte Beltran at Saltmine, and Jake Snyder at TrackFlow. So now here's the big moment of truth. We're actually doing this a little different. Everybody who is attending, we're going to do a poll, and we're going to, I don't want to say pick a winner, but let's pick a favorite, because frankly, all four of them were favorites of mine. But let's go ahead and launch this final poll, and we'll all get to decide which one was our favorite. Density, Occupier, Saltmine, TrackFlow. Go ahead and take a few seconds to go ahead and submit. And we will, I don't think we're going to make this public. I think PwC is going to give me an envelope, and we're going to take a look at it. Now, I have noticed there have been questions in the chat about getting emails so that all four of you can be contacted. Thank you for doing that. For those of you who are attending, you can certainly reach out if you want more information on any of these solutions. I'm sure all four of you would be glad to speak to any of the attendees who are interested in that. And we have a favorite. We have a favorite. Today, the favorite is Density. Today, the favorite is Density. So Laura Patel, thank you. But I will say to all of the presenters, this is great stuff. This is great stuff. And I would encourage all of the participants to read more online, reach out, get more information, and be a part of this transformation that's happening in the industry. So with that, any closing comments from the Sharks, from the attendees, or from CoreNet New York? I think we're good. Stan, Gus, Kurt.
Thank you.
It was fun.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Megan, thank you for joining us, and we'll look forward to doing this again. Be safe, everyone, and we'll see you next time.
Take care.
Bye, guys.